What would you do if the very seat you paid for was stripped away, not because of a mistake, not because of a rule, but because of the color of your skin? What if the quiet dignity you carried became the very reason someone tried to erase you? On a long overnight flight, Dr. Maya Ellington, a respected physician, boarded with nothing more than hope for rest before a crucial day ahead. But as the aircraft lifted into the stormy sky, a different storm brewed inside the cabin. A flight attendant, smiling in public but cutting in private, singled her out again and again, at 30,000 feet, with nowhere to turn. Maya faced not only turbulence in the air, but turbulence of injustice. Her dignity questioned, her presence resented. Would she remain silent to keep the peace? Would anyone dare to stand beside her? And what happens when the plane touches down, and the truth can no longer be hidden? This is more than a story about a flight. It is a story about humanity, dignity, and the strength to rise when the world tries to keep you down. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this deserve to be heard. What happens when a woman who has spent her entire life stitching broken hearts back together is treated as if she doesn't belong in the very seat she has paid for? What happens when the life-saving hands of a surgeon are dismissed, not for her actions, but for her presence tonight? We begin the story of Dr. Maya Ellington, a woman of brilliance, of grace, of quiet dignity, and yet a woman about to be tested in ways she never imagined. The scent of polished leather and filtered cabin air hung heavy in Stellar Air Flight 904, waiting at the gate of Boston Logan International Airport. For Maya, it was a familiar atmosphere. She had spent the last 72 hours presenting her groundbreaking research on pediatric cardiac surgery at a world-renowned symposium. The exhaustion in her body was real, but so was the pride. She had stood in front of colleagues from around the globe, speaking about delicate procedures that had saved the lives of children once thought untreatable. She was tired, yes, but she was also fulfilled. Maya pulled her carry-on through the jet bridge with steady steps, the soft click of her heels muffled against the carpet. First class was meant to be her sanctuary. Seat 1A was waiting for her small cocoon in the sky, a space to rest her mind before returning to London. All she wanted was peace, maybe a blanket, maybe some sparkling water with lime, and the steady hum of engines carrying her across the Atlantic. At the entrance of the cabin, a woman blocked her path with a polished smile, or at least what looked like a smile. Her name tag read Claudia Hensley, the senior purser of the flight. Her uniform was flawless. Her blonde hair, twisted into a severe bun, gave her an aura of authority sharpened to a point. "Good evening," Maya said warmly, offering a polite nod. "I'm heading to my seat. 1A, for the briefest moment." Claudia's eyes flicked downward at the boarding pass, then back up to Maya's face. It was less than a second, but it was enough. Maya saw it, that quick flash of surprise, followed by a tightening of the jaw, a question unspoken, yet painfully clear. "You in seat 1." Claudia's voice shifted, clipped and cool. "Right this way." Maya followed, brushing off the chill that lingered in the purser's tone. She slid into the wide, leather pod of 1A, sinking into the comfort that she had earned. She shrugged off her cashmere coat Jonathan had given it to her last winter, and its softness reminded her of his steady presence. She reached to hang it neatly in the side closet when Claudia reappeared, hand outstretched. "I'll take that." Claudia said not as an offer, but as a command. Before Maya could respond, the coat was whisked from her hands. The contact was sharp, almost electric. And then her treasured coat was shoved unceremoniously into the closet with a careless thud. Maya took in a slow, measured breath, the kind she used before making the first incision in a delicate operation. Control the breathing, control the hand, control the moment. Don't give power to something small. You're tired, she told herself. Maybe she's tired too. Other passengers began filing in. Across the aisle, a silver-haired man in a tailored navy suit lowered himself into 1D. Claudia's face lit up instantly, all warmth and familiarity. Mr. Grant, welcome back to Stellar Air. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. The man smiled, accepting the pre-departure champagne Claudia offered him with both hands, as though he were royalty. Maya turned her gaze back to the window, focusing on the movements of the ground crew below. A line of service trucks, a fuel hose, anything to ignore the sudden, widening gap between how she was treated and how the others were. 10 minutes later, the cabin was filling quickly. Champagne glasses clinked. Laughter rose softly. Maya's tray table remained bare. No glass, no napkin, nothing. She decided to wait, giving the benefit of the doubt, but doubt had a way of hardening. Claudia passed by again, her eyes sweeping the cabin like a queen surveying her court. Maya spoke, her voice gentle. "Excuse me. When you have a moment, could I please have a glass of sparkling water with a slice of lime?" The pause was deliberate. Claudia turned, her face a mask of irritation. Her words were slow, condescending, each syllable wrapped in ice. "We will begin pre-departure service once all first-class passengers are seated." The tone was not informative. It was a reprimand, but for Maya Ellington, sitting quietly in seat 1A, it was already beginning to feel like a performance in which she had been denied a role. Claudia Hensley, the senior purser, moved through the aisle like the conductor of this performance. Her smile brightened for some passengers, dimmed for others, shifting as easily as light on water. To Mr. Edward Grant in 1D, a silver-haired financier whose cufflinks glinted under the lights, she offered warmth and familiarity. "Mr. Grant, your champagne is especially chilled this evening," Claudia said, her voice low, smooth, brimming with charm. "I remember you prefer it that way." Grant chuckled, flattered, raising his glass with a kind of entitlement that came from years of being catered to. Maya glanced at her empty tray again. No water, no lime, just silence, where a simple courtesy should have been. She swallowed down the tightness in her throat. It wasn't about the drink anymore. It was about what the empty space represented. When Claudia turned back toward the galley, Maya caught the quick flash of her eyes, cold and assessing. There was no attempt to hide it now. Maya's presence in seat 1A was not just unexpected, it was unwelcome. The memory of the careless way Claudia had shoved her coat into the closet replayed in her mind. Jonathan had chosen that coat for her on a snowy December evening, insisting she needed something warm and elegant for her travels. The weight of it was more than fabric. It carried meaning, love, a reminder of a life she had built with her own two hands and the sacrifices she and Jonathan had made together. For it to be treated like discarded luggage had cut deeper than she admitted in that moment. Maya folded her hands in her lap, steadying herself. She reminded herself of the lesson she gave her residents at the hospital. Never allow anger to guide your hand in surgery. The hand must be steady, precise, deliberate. Emotion clouds the cut. Emotion costs lives. But this wasn't an operating room. This was supposed to be a sanctuary. And emotion was already creeping in. Across the aisle, Claudia was now bent slightly at the waist, laughing with the young couple seated in 2D and 2F. They had just boarded, their designer carry-ons tucked neatly above them. She addressed them by name as if they were family. Champagne glasses were lifted into eager hands. Maya waited. 1 minute, 2, 3. The clinking of glasses grew louder, more joyful, as if mocking her silence. Finally, when Claudia strolled past again, Maya decided to try once more. Her voice remained calm, her words gentle. "Excuse me, Ms. Hensley. Could I please have that sparkling water with lime now?" Claudia stopped abruptly, as if Maya had broken an unspoken rule. She turned her head slowly, eyes narrowing. The smile she had worn moments before was gone, replaced with something sharp, something brittle. "I already told you," Claudia replied, her tone laced with irritation. "We will begin beverage service once all passengers are seated. You need to wait." The words were not just informative, they were punitive, spoken with the cadence of someone scolding a child. Maya felt the heat rise in her chest, but forced herself to remain composed. "Of course. I only asked because I noticed others had already received theirs." Claudia's lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. "We prioritize according to our service flow," she said curtly, then turned away without another glance. Maya sat back, stunned by the deliberate dismissal. Around her, the evidence contradicted Claudia's words. Glasses of champagne sparkled in nearly every hand in the cabin. Napkins had been placed neatly on trays, and still, seat 1A sat empty, conspicuous in its absence of service. A quiet voice inside Maya whispered what she didn't want to admit. This was not a mistake. This was not forgetfulness. This was intentional. Her fingers tapped lightly on the armrest, an unconscious rhythm of frustration. Should she press again? Should she make herself small, invisible, endure the slight in silence? Or should she demand the basic courtesy that every other passenger had been granted without hesitation? She thought of the children whose lives she had held in her hands. She thought of her residents, young black women who looked at her and saw possibility, saw a future for themselves in a field that had long excluded them. What message would it send if she sat silent in this seat, swallowing indignity with quiet resolve? Maya reached forward and pressed the call button again. The soft chime echoed overhead, a tiny sound with enormous weight. From the galley. Claudia's eyes flicked upward. She saw the light. She hesitated, then deliberately turned her back, resuming a conversation with another flight attendant as though the call had never been made. 2 minutes passed, then 3. Finally, it was Aaron Blake who appeared once more, his young face earnest, professional. "Dr. Ellington, what can I get for you?" Maya smiled with gratitude, though her heart was heavy. "Just sparkling water with lime. Please." Aaron nodded and turned quickly, eager to fulfill the simple request. But before he could reach the galley, Claudia stepped into his path. The exchange that followed was too quiet to be fully heard, but the tension was unmistakable. Aaron's shoulders stiffened. Claudia's hand cut the air with sharp gestures. Her eyes darted toward Maya again, filled with unspoken fury. Aaron looked torn, glancing back at Maya briefly before nodding reluctantly and retreating to the rear of the aircraft. The rejection landed like a stone in Maya's chest. Claudia then marched toward her, her heels clicking against the carpet, each step like the strike of a gavel. She stopped at Maya's seat, lowering her voice so only the immediate rouse could hear. The words hung in the air. Poisonous, irreversible. Passengers nearby stiffened. Edward Grant lowered his newspaper slowly, glancing over with furrowed brows. The young couple in 2D shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware of the storm brewing in their luxury cabin. A chill spread through Maya's body. This was no longer about water, no longer about courtesy. With a single phrase, Claudia had shifted the narrative entirely. Security risk. The kind of label that could follow her beyond this flight, beyond this evening, staining her name, her reputation, her career. Maya sat frozen, her heart pounding, the taste of injustice sharp in her mouth. She knew then, with absolute clarity, that her night was about to spiral into something far worse than she had imagined. And the curtain of civility that cloaked this cabin of luxury had just begun to tear apart. The cabin seemed to grow smaller, the air heavier. Words once spoken cannot be pulled back, and Claudia's accusation lingered like a storm cloud. Maya sat upright in her seat, her posture regal despite the weight pressing on her chest. Around her, the low hum of conversation had stilled. Passengers who had been sipping champagne and murmuring about business deals or vacation plans now leaned ever so slightly toward the drama unfolding at the front of the cabin. Maya drew a steady breath, forcing her voice to remain calm. She had spent a lifetime mastering composure, in surgical theaters where every heartbeat mattered. She was not about to lose that discipline now, even if her own heart was hammering in her chest. "Excuse me," she said clearly, her tone measured. "I would like to clarify what just happened. I pressed the call button once, not multiple times. I made a simple request, one that every other passenger in this cabin has already been granted, and yet I am being accused of harassment." Her words carried across the first-class cabin. A few passengers shifted uncomfortably. Edward Grant lowered his newspaper completely now, his brow furrowed in what looked like disapproval not of Maya, but of Claudia. Claudia's smile was tight, brittle. "Dr. Ellington, you are escalating the situation. I need you to control your behavior for the safety and comfort of everyone on this flight." There it was again, that word, safety, a word heavy with implication. A word that had been weaponized against people like Maya countless times before. Safety did not mean actual danger. Safety meant discomfort. Claudia's discomfort at Maya's presence, her confidence, her unwillingness to shrink. Maya's mind flashed back to medical school. She remembered the professor who once dismissed her questions in class, telling her to check her attitude when she pressed for clarification. She remembered the patient's family who looked past her, assuming the white male resident must be the doctor instead. She remembered every time her competence, her dignity, her very belonging had been questioned not because of her skills or her behavior, but because of who she was. She felt the burn of injustice rise, but she tamped it down, steady as she always was in the operating room. "Claudia," Maya said softly, deliberately using the purser's first name, stripping away the shield of her uniform. "I am not a threat. I am not disruptive. I am not unsafe. I am simply asking to be treated with the same courtesy as everyone else in this cabin. Nothing more, nothing less." The purser's lips pressed into a thin line. Her eyes flicked toward the galley where Aaron stood awkwardly, clearly torn between his duty to follow his superior's orders and his instinct to provide basic service to Maya. His face carried a quiet frustration, one he dared not voice. Claudia straightened, her voice rising just enough for the entire cabin to hear. "You have been difficult since you boarded. Dr. Ellington." Her words cut through the cabin like a scalpel, sharp and undeniable. Claudia's face flushed, her composure cracking for the first time. She leaned closer, her voice a hiss. "You are on thin ice. Dr. Ellington, One more word, and you will be removed from this flight. Maya felt the threat like a blade pressed against her throat. Removed, humiliated, paraded through the aisle under the watchful eyes of strangers. The idea was almost unbearable. Yet beneath the fear, something else stirred. Resolve. She thought of Jonathan, waiting for her in London, always reminding her that dignity was not something granted by others. It was something you claimed, something you held on to even when the world tried to strip it away. She thought of the young medical students who looked up to her, who needed to see that silence was not the only option. Maya straightened, her eyes meeting Claudia's without flinching. If you feel the need to remove me for asking for water, then so be it. But know this, I will not go quietly, and I will not let your version of this story be the only one told. The cabin fell silent. Even the hum of the engine seemed muted under the weight of her words. Claudia blinked, thrown off balance. She had expected compliance, or perhaps angry outbursts she could use to justify her accusations. She had not expected calm defiance. She had not expected clarity sharpened by years of discipline. Edward Grant cleared his throat, his voice carrying across the cabin. For what it's worth, I've been sitting here since boarding. Dr. Ellington has been nothing but polite. If anything, she's been treated unfairly. The words landed like stones in water, rippling outward. Claudia's head snapped toward him, her eyes flashing with irritation, but she quickly masked it with a professional smile. Thank you for your input, Mr. Grant, but crew safety assessments are not open to debate. Maya turned her gaze back to the window, her reflection faint against the glass. She felt the ache of humiliation settle in her chest, but beneath it, a quiet strength grew. She had not been silenced. She had spoken her truth. And though Claudia still held the power in this moment, Maya knew the cracks in her authority had begun to show. As the last passengers boarded and the doors prepared to close, Maya leaned back in her seat, her heart heavy but steady. The battle was far from over, and deep down, she knew this flight would carry her into a confrontation far greater than she could imagine. Because when a simple request is denied, when dignity itself is treated as negotiable, the consequences are never simple. They are seismic, and the tremors had only just begun. The cabin door closed with a heavy thud, and the sound seemed to reverberate through Dr. Maya Ellington's chest. Flight 904 was sealed, bound for London. Passengers were settling into their seats, buckling belts, tucking bags into compartments. Yet for Maya, there was no settling. The threat Claudia had just delivered hung in the air like turbulence before takeoff. She tried to focus on her breathing, slow and steady, in through the nose, out through the mouth. The same rhythm she used before beginning surgery. The same rhythm she had taught her young patients to calm their nerves before procedures. But here, in this polished cocoon of first class, the rhythm felt forced, fragile. Claudia returned to the galley, her heels clicking sharply against the carpet. She whispered to another flight attendant, her voice low but urgent. Maya could not hear the words, but she saw the gestures, the quick cutting movements of hands, the sharp tilt of the head toward her seat. The story was being written, and she was not the author. Aaron Blake, the young attendant, glanced toward her with something like apology in his eyes. He mouthed nothing, but the look said enough. He wanted to help, but he was trapped. Maya's thoughts churned. If Claudia truly escalated this, if she formally declared her a threat, what would happen? Would security meet her at the gate in London? Would she be detained, questioned, humiliated? Would her reputation be dragged through the mud before she even had the chance to explain? She pressed her palms together, grounding herself. She could not let fear write the next chapter. "Ladies and gentlemen," the captain's voice boomed overhead, calm and authoritative. "This is Captain Robert Kane. We're expecting a smooth ride tonight across the Atlantic, with an estimated arrival in London at 7:45 local time. Please make sure your seatbelts are fastened as we prepare for takeoff." The cabin shifted into pre-departure mode. Passengers adjusted their seats. Phones were switched off. And yet, the tension between Maya and Claudia hovered, unspoken but undeniable. Would he truly stand up if it came to that? Or would the weight of convenience and comfort keep him silent when silence was easiest? The engines roared to life. The plane taxied down the runway, gathering speed until the ground fell away and the cabin tilted upward into the night sky. Boston's lights glittered below, then faded as darkness swallowed the view. Maya stared out the window, her reflection faint against the glass. She thought of Jonathan, his voice steady and grounding, telling her before every trip to protect her peace. She longed to hear him now, to feel his hand resting over hers, reminding her she was not alone. The seatbelt sign pinged off. Passengers shifted, adjusting blankets and reclining seats. Claudia reappeared once more, her smile directed at everyone but Maya. She approached Aaron, whispering quickly in his ear. He looked troubled, but nodded reluctantly before disappearing toward the back of the plane. Moments later, Claudia approached Maya's seat, crouching slightly so her face was level. Her smile was gone. Only steel remained. "Dr. Ellington," she said quietly, but firmly, "I've noted your behavior in the flight log. If it continues, I will have no choice but to arrange for your removal upon landing." Do you understand? Maya's heart skipped. Removal. Formal. Logged. She kept her voice calm. What behavior? Exactly. Are you documenting asking for water, pressing the call button once, or disagreeing with the way I've been treated? Claudia's eyes hardened. Your tone, your attitude, your refusal to comply when asked to wait, all of it constitutes disruptive behavior. Maya let the words sink in. Tone, attitude, the invisible crimes, the subjective charges that could never be disproven, only weaponized. "Claudia," Maya said softly, her eyes unwavering, "I know what this is, and I need you to think carefully about the record you're creating, because this is not just about tonight, but not braver." Her words hung in the air, quiet but sharp. The minutes stretched into an uneasy silence. Finally, Aaron returned. His face pale, he bent slightly, speaking in a low whisper. "Dr. Ellington, I'm so sorry. I can't go against my supervisor, but please know you've done nothing wrong. I'll do what I can to make this right." Maya gave him a faint smile. "Thank you. I appreciate your honesty." He slipped away again, guilt written across his features. Maya leaned back in her seat, her mind racing. She thought of her patience, of the oath she had taken to do no harm, to preserve life, to fight for those who could not fight for themselves. Was this moment any different? Wasn't she being asked to shrink, to accept harm quietly, to pretend indignity was normal? Her chest tightened. No, she could not. She closed her eyes, whispering under her breath, "Hold your ground. Maya, hold it." The rest of the cabin moved on as if nothing had happened. To most passengers, the flight now seemed like any other, a smooth night crossing the Atlantic with comfort and champagne. But to Dr. Maya Ellington, each moment carried the weight of Claudia's threat. She shifted in her seat, trying to release the tension coiled in her shoulders. She thought about her patients back in Boston, the children who trusted her with their lives. She thought about the long nights in residency when she had been told, more than once, that she was too sensitive when she called out unfairness. But sensitivity was not weakness, it was awareness. And right now, her awareness was sharper than ever. Claudia walked down the aisle again, her steps deliberate, her smile perfectly restored. She leaned gently toward the young couple in row 2, offering them menus with a gracious tilt of her head. "We'll be serving dinner shortly,"